Thank you again to Jessica and the team for establishing the foundation session for this event. Without much further ado, I'd like to invite our next facilitator for session 2, where we will be exploring Pacific perspectives on health, well-being, and school food systems. Ms. Debbie Futapuati, the Cook Islands lead for the network. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Kia ora na tātou katoto, ko Debbie Futapuati tōku ingo. I'm from the Cook Islands and the Cook Islands lead for the Pacific School Food Network. Honourable Minister, thank you for your words. And I think we've had an amazing start to our few days together to think about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how we can best serve our communities. Today I want to talk about health, wellbeing and school food systems, but from a Pacific context. And I think it's really important that we just take a moment to lay the foundation or a conceptual framework for the way that we think about health and wellbeing in terms of the fact that we are grounded in the Pacific, and most of the Pacific has been colonized in some way. And so sometimes we've forgotten or we have to revitalize our ideas about who we were before colonization and how we think about multinational organizations working in our space to make sure that when we're working with them, we come from a Pacific perspective. Oh. So what is health? No, I just lost it. Okay, so what does being healthy mean to you? Let's just start right from the beginning. What does being healthy mean to you? Take a little moment to think about that and tell the person sitting next to you, what does being healthy mean to you? Turn to your partner. We're going to have a bit of talk and play and drawing in this session, all right? What does being healthy mean to you? You get 1 minute, so get talking, quick, quick, quick. Okay. I knew once I started you talking, I'd probably find it hard to stop you. But that's okay. We're going to be doing lots of talking. So I'm imagining that people talked a lot about healthy food, right? But there's many more aspects to being healthy than just what we eat. And that's a little bit what my presentation is about today. Let's have a look to see what some of the big guns say health is. This is the UN Declaration of Human Rights. And they say that everyone has the right to a standard of living that's adequate for health and well-being. So the word adequate is always interesting to me because what's adequate for you might be different to what's adequate for me. And so those are the things that we need to think about. But you see included in that declaration the words food, clothing, shelter, medical care, access to support and social services. Okay, so that's kind of one idea about health and well-being. What about WHO? Well, probably most of us be familiar with this kind of idea that health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely just not being sick. So it's broader than that. So we start to see some broader perspectives coming in. But when we think about Pacific countries, we often get a bit broader as well, more so than those previous two slides. When we ask Pacific people about health and well-being, their frameworks generally are much more connected to a holistic worldview. They include things like the people, of course, and the interrelationships between people, but not just people who are living, people, our ancestors, and also our descendants to come. We're often thinking about the next 7 generations after us, and is what we're doing in this day, in this place, going to benefit not just the people who are in this space right today, but going to be good for our children of the future. So when you start to think about health from a perspective that is connected to our ancestral knowledge and also our future descendants, we start to think very differently about health and well-being. So there's that harmonious relationship between people and the environment. It's not just a neoliberal kind of idea about what we do in this place, how much we can sell to a person in this moment in time. There's a spiritual element to health and well-being. Those are sometimes connected to religion, but not always. It's also connected to things like Indigenous cultural values and beliefs. So the values and beliefs of spiritual well-being, where does that sit in the previous declarations and ideas about health? And happiness and its connection to well-being, which I just think is one of the main things that we need to think about, the missing discourse of pleasure. When we think about food, we often eat the things that are not so good for us or drink the things that are not so good for us because of the pleasure component that is associated with eating or consuming or sitting alongside people as we do those things, the social connections. So I'm just going to share I could share many more perspectives of health or frameworks or concepts of health. They're called different things in different places, but I'm just going to share 3 just to set the foundation for the way we think about the work that we're doing for the next few days. I'm going to share a Whunawhale model by Carl Enderman, Pita Whenua, which is a Cook Islands model, and Te Wheke, which is a Tuvaluan model. Whunawhale model was really designed by Carl when he was working in a health setting, working with lots of Pacific people in terms of, so there was Fijian, Samoan, Tongan, Tuvaluan, Cook Islanders, many different groups came together. And you'll see in this model that they've used the metaphor of a whale to, because they all identified with that metaphor of this is a home and we should always feel safe and secure in a home. At the foundation of the whale is family, okay? The Pacific people in that organization were completely thinking that our families have to be health, and the roof overriding the whole idea of health and well-being is culture. You can see the post there, there's physical, spiritual, mental, and there's a whole lot of others represented on that post there that is things like our sexuality, our gender, our age, and the social engagements that we have. You can see the holistic nature of this whale in terms of the circle around the outside, that all of those things are contingent on the context that we're standing in, the amount of time and the place, the time and place that we're talking about, and the environment which is either health enhancing or detracting from our health. And that can be from the room that we're standing in, to the school that we're going to the village that we live in or the island that we live in, and making sure that that environment is more likely to support our health and well-being than to detract from it. So that's Carl's, the Whunawhale model. This is the model of Pita Whenua. It was designed for the health and physical well-being curriculum in the Cook Islands for the Ministry of Education. And the curriculum needed to be founded on a Cook Islands understanding of health and well-being. If we were going to work in schools, we needed to have an understanding of what does Cook Islanders think is important. Now, there's a 5th dimension added in here compared to WHO's dimension, and that's environment. Because if you're a Pacific person living on an island or an atoll, you cannot not be connected to the environment. You are 100% aware of what is happening. If you live on an atoll and there is no soil and you cannot grow fruit and vegetables and you're told that you're supposed to eat 5+ a day, for example, those sorts of things. So there's mental and emotional, and it's represented through the metaphor of a waka because Cook Islands people identified with that. The sail is where the winds go, but it's your thoughts that direct you on your journey. The hull of the waka represents the physical well-being because without that, the waka doesn't go anywhere. It's where all the people sit, and if the waka's got a hole in it, you're in trouble. The ama is the spiritual, represents spiritual well-being because if your ama is up out of the water, you've got to have the skills to get it back down. That's where your values and beliefs keep you on the straight and narrow in terms of your health and well-being. The oi, the paddles are social well-being, in terms of you have to paddle this waka with a group of people, and if you're not all in time and in unison and an understanding about where you're going together, you're going to go round and round in circles. All right. And of course, the waka is set in the ocean, and the ocean is never just still. And even if it is still, it's not the best paddling conditions because you have to work real hard. Okay. So you need some swell, you need a bit of action on the ocean to be able to do that. But you also have to have the skills not to tip your waka. And if it does tip, you need the skills to be able to right yourself back up again, just as we do when we hit a traumatic event in our life, because if we haven't got the skills, not just the knowledge, to be able to right our waka or to get ourselves standing back up on our feet when things come at us, we're in trouble. The third model is from Tuvalu, and Tafua put this together with his PhD studies. The thing I really love is similar, I don't know, it's my slipping laptop. Really loved about this one is that it's got happiness and contentment in terms of the important nature of the way we think, and it's represented through a wheke or an octopus, and it talks about yes, longevity and fitness and how we get those things, those important things that are in Western models, but the connection to people, happiness, joy, and hard work is in there too. I thought was a really beautiful way of thinking about health and well-being and the way that we work together, the interconnectedness of these components of this model. So what does that mean for us working in food and schools in terms of this Pacific School food networks? We are talking about Pacific school food. We're talking about Pacific children. So let's think about a Pacific way of health and well-being. So on your table, each table has got a piece of butcher's paper and a couple of pens, or some only got one pen, so you might have to swap for the second part of the activity. If someone could open up that page, there's a body outline on there. I'm not an artist, don't blame me for the cookie cutter look. And in your tables, I'm going to ask you to write on the inside of the body, what are all the things that Pacific children need to be healthy in our schools? So somebody grab a pen, and you haven't got too long because we're already behind time, right? So this is where we're going to do this collaborative work where we talk to each other. Oh my goodness, if you don't know the name of the person you're sitting next to, please introduce yourself. What are all the things that Pacific children need to be healthy in our schools? Go. Okay, 30 more seconds. Okay. If I could just ask you to put your pen down for a minute, you're going to be able to do more talking in a second. Just pop your pen down for a moment. I know the excitement of working together is fantastic. Kids do this too. Adults are harder than kids. Okay, so you're likely to have some things like this. It may not, you will have different things, but I just put some together, some things that kids need to be having fun at school, that they need to be getting enough sleep, that they're doing well, they're achieving their sense of achievement, that they've got some positive relationships with the people around them, they've got some communication skills, they have some connection to culture, etc. You will have a whole lot of different things in there, and we will have a look at them shortly. Of course, there's things like a healthy body and that they're clean and strong and those sorts of things. What I'd like you to do now is to work on the outside of the body, okay? So you've got these children that you've thought about in terms of what they need to be healthy, and you put that on the inside. Now on the outside, in a different color pen. Oh, if you are, uh-oh, somebody didn't listen to the instructions. Uh-oh. We forgive you. Lost the audience. Okay, listening, please. I'll have to put my teacher voice on. No. If you are in the back tables, can you swap a color pen with the table next to you so you have a different color pen? If you're in the front tables, you've got two pens. Using a different color pen, start to write what are the things that might make it hard for children to be healthy in or at school? What are the things that might make it hard for children to be healthy at school? Yeah, it's just a little bit, might be because they're slipping a little bit. Okay, 30 more seconds. Go, 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 go. 30 seconds. Keep telling your writer some things. Okay, we could do this for longer. I know you know that. And this is actually an activity I quite often do in schools with teachers. Okay, listening, please, looking this way. So you may or may not have come up with the things that I've got on the slide. That's okay. This is just an example of the kinds of things that might make it hard for kids to be as healthy as we would like them to be when they come to our schools. There's a whole lot of things that impact the socio-ecological things that impact children and their health and well-being. So it might be that social media tells me that I'm fat. It might be that I'm not doing what my family wants me to do, and so I'm feeling like I'm failing, or that I'm rebellious, or I'm told that I'm naughty. Parents might be under pressure. There might not be enough time to make lunch because I've got to do my chores before I go to school. Peer pressure, etc. I might be too scared to ask for the help that I need at school. All of those different things. I'm worried about my dad, that he has diabetes, and I'm worried I might get it too. Those sorts of things, you'll have other things on there. But what I want you to do now is to think about those different dimensions of health that are in the frameworks. What I'd like you to do, I know this is just too exciting to stop, I understand. But what I want you to do now is to code some of these things, because what I would like to do is to draw the Pacific frameworks that I was talking to earlier in this presentation into this piece of paper that you've got. The interconnectedness of the dimensions of health. I'd like you to use a code, an oval if what you've written on your paper is connected to physical health, a triangle if it's connected to mental and emotional health, a hexagon if it's connected to social, a star if it's spiritual, and a square if it's environmental. Think what you will see as you move through this is many of these are connected to multiple dimensions of health. Have a go and see how you go. We don't have to do them all, but let's just have a go for a couple of minutes to see if we can code them. Yep. Fine. Yeah. I've got my timer on. Okay, one more minute. It doesn't matter if we don't get them all finished, just one more minute. Okay, if you could just finish off the one that you're doing, and then we'll come back together. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that this process delivered you, I mean, you know, the understanding that so many of these things are multidimensional in terms of our health. So that when we're thinking about food interventions, we need to be thinking about all of these other dimensions of health and well-being. We need to be thinking about the mental and emotional aspects of food, the pleasure component of food, the social aspects of food. When we sit and cook something, when we cook, or maybe when we grow something together, then we cook something together and then we eat it together, the pleasure that comes from communal eating. The longevity in terms of we need to, the messaging to be about our families need to be to survive a long time. You know, when I look at those campaigns that bring whānau or family into health promotion campaigns, they've been much more successful than when we just tell someone that they should go and do something or they shouldn't do something. You can see that, you know, these are the components that we need to think about. And I suggest that maybe some of our interventions in the past haven't been as successful as we've wanted them to be because we've been focused mainly on the physical, that you do this because your physical health will be improved. But until we bring in these other components of thinking about health and well-being, what does that mean for us? How can we change our environment in a school if we notice that a child doesn't have lunch? The social justice aspects of food, the food sovereignty, the food security, and all of those other aspects, rather than just you're not allowed to drink fizzy and you must eat fruit and vegetables kind of message. All of those different things that we can be thinking about. We can think about them from the policy level, so it changes the structure, but we also have to be able to, the structural implications of schools and villages and islands, but we also need to think about the everyday doing so that when a child arrives in a school, the healthy decision or the healthy choice is the easiest choice to make. Yeah, because without that changing, we are really going to struggle to get the message, the changes in behaviour, not just the understanding. We all know we should eat more fruit and vegetables, and I shouldn't really have my gin and tonic and chippies on a Friday night, but I still have them for my mental and emotional health, right? Not necessarily my physical health. So stand up and just have a look at one of the groups and just have a little chat, or don't have to have a chat. You can take the group together to have a look. I call it a bus stop. Jump up and walk to the next bus stop and have a look at another group's child in a Pacific school and what they thought was important. Okay, when you've had a look at it, one or two, come and sit down at your table and I want you to grab your phone. Yes, I'm telling you to grab your phone. You're allowed to grab your phone because we're going to do a little activity next. Okay. So now we're going to do an activity with 6 questions. And you need your phone to be able to do this. We're going to use a tool called Mentimeter, okay? And so you need to scan this code to be able to get into the questions, okay? So you're allowed to be on your phone. How about that? Everybody got in? Can you give me a thumbs up if you're in? Still a couple of thumbs down? Okay. First question. Ooh, I can't see. Well, we've got people coming in already. So what we're doing is we're all answering the same question, and we're seeing the answers appear before us about what's most important. It's really interesting because I think often what we do in PEs, now I'm a health and PE teacher by history, by trade. And one of the things I think that we often do in PE is put children off lifelong moving because of the way that we teach PE. And so physical activity, I agree, is like the most important thing that we do. But we want to engage children in activities where they enjoy moving and that they want to continue to move in that way for the rest of their life, rather than tell them to run across country with no training and put them off running for life, you know? So thinking about the way that we think about physical activity is really important. Play is coming up here. I think sometimes as we move through our school systems, we forget about play and the importance of laughter within education and play, and how we can actually incorporate play into our activities. You can see lots and lots of different policies. Farming. Now I know in our schools in the Cook Islands, there's not much connection with farming, but I understand in the Pacific it's quite different, and that's great. Okay, let's go to the next question. You can keep answering that one if you haven't finished it. Here's the next question. What would we see happening in Pacific school food environments if our goal was to ensure children are mentally and emotionally healthy? Safe environment, that means not just the physical safety, it's like the kinds of words that are spoken between teachers and children, between children and children. That they can ask for help or tell someone that they don't understand. Peace gardens, lovely, I love it. All that research that talks about grounding and the importance of being, close to nature and what it does for our mental and emotional health as well. Yeah. Okay, if you finish that question, we'll come back to this. This is all data that we're going to collect and put forward into our plan about what was important to people. Love, respect, support, all the good stuff. Once you've finished that question, you can go on to the next one. What would we see if school food environments supported children's spiritual health, including traditional and cultural values and beliefs? Remember that spiritual health, it may or may not be religion, but it's also your values and beliefs. What are our values and beliefs about food? What are our values and beliefs about children's health? Karakia is like pure or a prayer before teaching some of those things about thinking where the food has come from, understanding where the food has come from, valuing our farmers as an important component of our community. understanding traditional knowledge around food, around hosting, around maybe it's not just quantity is not the best way that we look after our visitors, but quality of food. Some of those sort of values of beliefs that we've had to really unpack a bit in the Cook Islands. Conscious eating, kindness, love it. For those of you who have finished that question or have the next one, what would we see in Pacific school food environments, if Pacific school environments supported our children to be socially healthy? Would we see our children eating together, sharing, working together in the garden? I don't know. Maybe sharing food. If somebody didn't have food to eat, would that be something that we would encourage? In Western contexts, those sorts of things are not encouraged. Slovakia. I'd like to know what that means. Yeah, kids enjoying eating. Sometimes some of my grandchildren sometimes want to go and play, you know, rather than eat, and then wonder why the blood sugar is so low at the end of the day. It's so grumpy because play is much more fun. All right, so we're getting a fantastic picture there of what's important to the people in the room, and when we're thinking about those school food environments, about social health. Next question. What kind of environmental changes do we need in Pacific schools so that they are spaces where children can thrive, learn, and be healthy? I know in the Cook Islands, our schools are really, you know, under-resourced, and I know that by comparison to some other Pacific nations, they're very well resourced. And I think we've got some people from Aotearoa in the room, and even in Aotearoa, which is a developed nation, there's some schools that are poorly resourced when it comes to this space. Green spaces, yeah. Yeah, washing facilities. Some of our schools and the cooks do things like brush their teeth after eating time because many families don't have toothbrushes. So how do we encourage those sorts of habits? Filtered water, yep. Fresh food rather than the local, you know, major food companies sponsoring the tuck shop. Those are the things that we deal with in the Cook Islands, or vendors selling food out of the boot of cars because schools don't have tuck shops, and sort of how do we create that environmental change with them so that they provide healthy choices for our kids. Beautiful. Really getting to see some things that are really possible there. And there's one more question. If you have finished with replying to that one, you can start on the next one when you're ready. How could we use different dimensions of health to strengthen school food environments to be culturally grounded, meaningful, and effective? How can we use different dimensions of health to strengthen school food environments to be culturally grounded, meaningful, and effective? So that's culturally grounded in Pacific context. So our schools look different to schools in other countries. Many of our families in the Cook Islands don't have breakfast because everyone's working while it's cooler before they go to school. So what could we do to support the fact that that's what families do, and then the children come to school without having eaten. Can we do in terms of the kinds of plants that are on school, that all the plants are native plants and that they provide food and sustenance for our school community? Maybe that's something we could do. I've always wondered why the perimeter of schools are not fully planted with fruit trees. And then the fruit can be used in, or nuts, you know. What kind of traditions can we create in our school around health and well-being and food? Some of those traditional knowledges about food and food sovereignty have been lost, haven't they? So it's about the revitalisation of that knowledge. And who do we seek to get that information from? Because in some of our countries, you know, through colonisation, we've really lost a lot of that knowledge. And so how do we revitalise that and bring it back with a sense of pride? Okay. Just finish those off. We'll still be able to collect the data. But I just want to finish now with this, thinking about those dimensions of health and the way that we can use them for strengthening school food environments so that they're more culturally grounded, more meaningful and more effective for Pacific children and Pacific communities. So I wanted to do this activity just to lay the foundation or the conceptual framework for the way that we think going forward over these next 3 days, that anything that we're talking about, we're thinking about the health and well-being from a Pacifica lens, from a multidimensional lens, with the context in mind, rather than taking an outside perspective around what we might do and thinking differently. If we're thinking about, if we're going to weigh children, how does that impact their mental and emotional health? If we're going to give the impression that they're overweight, how does that impact on their mental and emotional health, their social health? So that we're not just thinking about the physical, that we're thinking more broadly about how we can incorporate some of these things with more nuance and more contextual relevance. Thank you. That's my my challenge to you for the next few days. I'm going to finish there. There's a few references there in case you need them. Mai taki mata, kia manuia. Thank you so much.